Good morning and welcome to the morning stand-up. I'm Stacy K and I just want to let you know that it is cold outside. It's really cold. I'm under a pile of blankets with my cats, not going outside and watching European ice skating. Just seems there's no football on and it seems like a good time to watch it. How do these people not get dizzy? That's crazy. I feel like their inner ears should probably be studied by scientists. Maybe it's a genetic thing to not get dizzy when they spin around like that. Who knows? Wow, these two people just kissed on the ice. How is that legal? I feel like that's you shouldn't allow that. It could be unsafe. They could transmit STDs that way on the whatever. And at one point does it stop? Like full penetration? Is there a rule against that? I don't know. Oh my god, it's too cold out there. It's -5, I think, right now. I was watching the Chiefs game last night, and they were playing in like -4 or whatever degree temperature. It was so cold. Well, Andy Reid's mustache froze. That was pretty funny. He was like a walrus with a frozen mustache. And Patrick Mahomes on a run, he got hit in the helmet, and he wasn't even that hard of a hit, but the helmet cracked and like flew, and he had to like change helmets and all that kind of stuff. That's how cold it is here. I was talking about going to the game with some people because it's here in Kansas City, but like, holy shit, no, not that game. Too cold. We weatherproofed our house this year, and I think we'd be dying if we hadn't done that, because otherwise it's like the Yukon around here. My cats haven't played in the snow at all. They haven't even been wanting to go outside lately because they're cowards. I was thinking about just throwing them in the snow. I think that would be pretty funny. However, I talked to all the cats, and only Floof Cat was mildly interested in the idea. The other cats were very upset. They were very not into it, so I decided to get rid of the whole project of throwing cats outside. That wasn't going to work out. And I can tell you what, right now, there's no way I can be anywhere other than inside. I'm not. Everybody want to be outside, but I am inside. Inside. Everybody wanna be outside, but I am indoor. Indoor. Listen to me, I'm gonna tell you that when you have a roof on your head, over your head, you're always gonna find that the rain is gonna avoid your head. Your head. But rain on the roof is good. But rain on your head can be bad, can be bad, can be bad. Get your umbrella, but that is not as good as a roof, because a roof will make you inside, inside. That's a song written by my good friend Brian Jordan Alvarez, under the character TJ Mack, very famous pop star. I think about it all the time. It is January, otherwise known as job hunting season, and that's what I'm doing. I'm applying to a billion jobs, looking for better options. It's usually job hunting season because that's when, like, corporations, they've passed the holiday thing, so they aren't going to hire in December typically, because people don't want to be in the office a lot because it's the holidays, they're taking PTO, all that kind of stuff, and everything's gearing back up. So I've been doing a lot of that, and I was so busy that I forgot to ask people for letters for the podcast. So we're doing no letters today. It's just me entertaining you on my own. So if it's a little bit of a shorter podcast or more of a boring podcast, don't get mad at me, okay? I'm trying to find a job. It's a lot of work, okay? Ice skating is cool, but the scoring doesn't make any sense to me. I've been watching it now for like 30 minutes, which should be enough to understand the sport entirely. I feel like if your sport takes more than 30 minutes to understand the scoring, then you shouldn't exist, which is why football shouldn't exist. I've been watching football for 20 something years, and still the rules are up for debate. But this is something else because it's all just points. They're just spinning around in circles like that, and they're really hot and everything. And like, I would give them all 10 out of 10 because there's no way I could do anything close to whatever they're doing. That's incredible. How do they pull this off? I think a big part of it is they have skates that are like good and not rental skates from the rink that hurt your feet and hurt your ankles and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably part of it. But also they're probably pretty good at ice skating and have been working on this for probably their whole lives, which probably explains how they're able to pull this off. But like 63.13 points off of the last ladies thing. I think she's Italian. Yeah. You ever think about how Italy is the Mexico of Europe? You ever think about that? They have a similar flag right off the bat, I'll tell you that. But also like the food is really good. It's like southern. It the country kind of looks like a boot. It's a perfect it's a perfect one-to-one thing. It's just Western Hemisphere. Well, okay, I guess Europe is Western Hemisphere too. How do you describe it? There's it's just true. Mexico is the Italy of North America. And if that comes off as racist to you, then I'm sorry. I don't understand how it's racist, but you can explain it to me in an email if you want. Speaking of things that I probably shouldn't talk about out of fear of being called racist, tunnel Jews. Y'all see that? Where the Hasidic Jews were doing a tunnels under Brooklyn to get into another building. That was cool. That's one of my favorite stories I've ever seen in my life. It's got everything you want. It's got, well, one, it happens. It's right next to where I stay when I'm in Brooklyn, and I see these people a lot, and they stand on the street corners, and they wear their black outfits, and guys try to pass you pamphlets, and they ask you if you have any Jewish descent. And they won't take no for an answer. Like they come up to me and be like, "Do you have Jewish descent?" And I'm like, "No, I definitely 100% do not." And they still are like, "Are you sure?" Wink, wink. And it's like, can I just lie right now? Like, if I just lied and said I had Jewish descent, would you like recruit me or whatever? Who knows? But so this story is great. Okay, I'm going to talk about this, and this is an outsider's perspective. I'm kind of an idiot. I just, from what I know, from talking to people, and from what I read online. Okay, so this was basically in around like 1940 something. All right. So the Holocaust had just happened. It was pretty dark for Jewish people in the world, and it's not like after the Nazis went down, it's not like things just instantly improved for Jewish people because the Soviets didn't like Jews. The rest of Europe didn't like Jews. Most of them went to America, not because they're like super into America or because America's super accepting, but it's just New York City was a port town that allowed a lot of people in and things like that. So that's where a lot of Jewish people went. And there was this dude who's basically messianic, like a Jesus type figure, who decided to put together a like a religious, I guess cult is the word, whatever. He's trying to like rebuild like Jewish long and the short is he started in this building, 770 Eastern Parkway. It was a really small building. The room that he started the thing in was really small. This was a very small movement starting out, and then it kind of got bigger. And the Chabad is what it's called. I think that's how you pronounce it. Is now it's kind of like bigger and stuff. But they lost ownership over the building, I believe, in 1950. It happened a long time ago. Uh, and the ownership has been disputed after somebody died or whatever. But it was still considered like a holy site that they wanted to go and like worship in, and they haven't been able to get into it. So they have a building next to that building, and they dug a tunnel from that building to the other building so they can get in it and worship and stuff. Uh, I think that's so cool. If you're willing to dig a tunnel to go worship somewhere, like you deserve it. I feel like. But the owner of the building that got the tunnel dug into it, the 770 Eastern Parkway, the holy place, right? He decided. I don't know why, but he was like, I'm tired of this tunnel. Let's fix it. And so they were going to fill it with concrete so that they can't do that anymore. And it turned into a whole thing. And there was like a Jewish riot in the synagogue with they're like fighting cops and stuff. Look up some of these videos. They're really interesting. I don't think anybody actually got hurt, but it was a cool little conflict, and you get to see all that kind of stuff. This is the perfect encapsulation of why I love New York. Okay, anything is possible, and you just gotta. It's hard not to like and sympathize with everybody in the situation. Like from the Hasidic Jews to the cops, they're all the characters of the story are. That's cool. I like it. I love New York. It's a great place. And in other news, this week in the news, the Houthis, right? These people in the bottom of the Saudi Arabian peninsula that goes into the Red Sea, which uses the Suez Canal, which is in Egypt. Lots of trade goes through there. The whole world uses it. There's been a war going on in Yemen, which is the bottom part of the Saudi Arabian peninsula. Um, and it's kind of difficult for Americans to view the conflict because it's a messy conflict, and like Saudi Arabia was like funding one part of the war, and it is all bloody or whatever. But the Houthis have kind of taken over, and they have, in solidarity with Palestine, they're like just bombing trade ships that come near Yemen going into the Red Sea. And they're not bombing ships that are even heading to Israel. They're bombing international trade ships. And what you might think about Palestine, like, we can't allow piracy like that. The whole world doesn't like that. It's not good for international trade for anybody. So they shot some missiles at freighters, and then America shot some missiles back. And according to the Houthis, there was only 5 casualties. They were all Houthi soldiers, no civilians. Um, but some people are getting mad about that on the internet, saying America's starting another war. And I gotta disagree. That's just not how wars are. Shooting pirates, that's not the same thing as starting a war. So hopefully they stop shooting missiles at trade ships, and everybody calms down, and then we all are just one big peaceful earth. That's what I'm hoping for. A big thing that America does that a lot of people don't really, or that we take for granted, I guess, because we don't remember living in a time when this wasn't. But America Navy protects the trade routes for all countries, like in the whole world. So piracy has like seriously gone down, because that was a big problem back in all of history. The thing that keeps naval trade from happening is just pirates. So they come in all over the world, but mostly they have boats. They show up, they hijack ships, they take the stuff, they loot, they shut down. Nobody, no companies, no countries want to send their boats through places where they can't protect from pirates. And America has been doing that ever since World War II for the whole world. So that's one thing that we do that everyone kind of appreciates. The rest of the world does, and some of them are trying to build up navies to do some of it themselves, so America doesn't have to be there as much. But I have my doubts on how well funded and everything everybody is like. So I think that we're gonna keep doing that for a while. We'll see. There's kind of a movement for America to pull back in general just because we don't like being responsible for stuff, as well as countries wanting to be more independent. But just a fun fact, I wanted why we don't see pirates so much anymore. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Captain Phillips, which is Somali pirates hijacked a freighter, took it over. You know that guy who's like, I am the captain now, right? Look at me, I'm the captain now. He said that to Tom Hanks. And in that movie, the U.S., the feds, came over and tried to like negotiate with him, get him out, all that kind of stuff. It was pretty intense. See Captain Phillips if you haven't. I think that movie came out probably about 10 years ago. God, I'm old. It's been a while. But that shows kind of more what modern piracy looks like. And that's not quite what the Houthis are doing, because the Houthis don't have boats like that. They've got missiles. So they're just shooting missiles. They're not actually commandeering the ships. Down in the American southern border, we have the Texas National Guard is now stopping federal agents from doing anything on the border because Texas has decided that it wants to control the border and it doesn't want the federal government to get involved, which I would say is definitely bad. We should not be letting states control the American border. That's crazy. And if you think that the American federal officers and stuff are bad when it comes to the border, you should see the Texas National Guard. They really are not. Let's just say Texas should not be in charge of migration. That's worse than the federal government, and so they're scuffling with federal agents, which to me that's basically a civil war. Like that's what it looks like. That's kind of what it not necessarily on the border, but state state militias, state National Guard, stuff like that, started beefing with federal officers and federal military and stuff like that over like who gets to control what. So that's not a good thing if you don't like civil wars. If you're into civil war, hey, this is your jam. Check it out. But dude, this is the border patrol, which are federal, controlled by the president, were apparently trying to rescue migrants who drowned, and the Texas National Guard stopped them. Was like, no, you can't help them at all. So this is an interesting situation. So you got Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who's defying Biden, right? They're just assholes. It's a territorial dispute, and I'm not a fan of a lot of Biden's border policies and things like that. But I tell you what, I'm much less of a fan of Texas's state government. That should not happen, and it'll be interesting to see what Biden does in response, because he has the right to draft the whole National Guard into the federal government and directly control them. I think technically the governor has to sign off on it. I'm not entirely sure. But this happened once in Arkansas, not when I was alive. It was way back, crisis at Central High. That's back whenever we were desegregating schools. And the first black students started going to a white school, and all the white people lost their minds as people in 1960s, white people in the 1960s were wont to do. Every time you hear like old people talk about like, we didn't do stuff like that back. Yes, you did. You were so much worse than us. You lost your minds because black people tried to go to school with you. So shut the fuck up, grandma. Anyways, to protect the black students going to school, the Eisenhower at the time drafted the Arkansas National Guard and had them physically show up in all of their military gear and stuff like that to escort the students to school to protect them from all of the angry, stupid white people. So that's a time in history that the National Guard was drafted that I know a little bit about. Look it up if you don't know anything about the crisis at Central High. That I learned about it a lot because I grew up in Arkansas, so they taught us about it. But I think a lot of the country doesn't really know much about that. But yeah, the civil rights era, in the 60s, there was a lot of stuff that went down. Like it was like violent and military action behind things and lots of civil unrest and things like that because that was back before 64. Black people didn't have a lot of rights that they now have today. And after they passed that, a lot of white people really lost their minds, and a lot of our politics and political parties today are entirely based off of the result of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. MLK Day is coming up. It's tomorrow. It's today if you're listening on Monday. And I heard that Charlie Kirk is going to be doing this whole thing on why the Civil Rights Act was bad and all that kind of stuff. And I'm telling you, that's what these conservatives are going after. When they're going after trans people, it's not just trans people. They're going after the Civil Rights Act, and they just view trans people as the weakest link right now. But they want to undo the whole thing. They want to allow segregation again. They want to allow discrimination in hiring, all that kind of stuff. They're targeting it all. And how did we get here? We were talking about Texas state troopers or whatever stopping federal agents. And now I'm just telling you in general about civil rights, which I think I'm pro civil rights. I think civil rights are good and that we should keep them. What do you think? Send me an email. Let me know how you feel about civil rights. And I hope that you're all into it because otherwise you should stop listening to this podcast. It's the beginning of the legislative session in Missouri, which I did a lot of testifying last year against some anti-trans bills. This year, they're set to be heard this Wednesday. If you're a Missouri trans person or someone who cares, this Wednesday, January 17th, show up to the courthouse and they have to let you talk. You show up and you give testimony. You get like 2 minutes to say whatever you want. It'll be recorded. It'll be written down, and senators and representatives will be able to use that testimony as a point of argument and whenever it goes to the floor, as well as whenever it goes, if it gets passed, if it goes to the courts. So that can help out. But the main thing, so they filed 7 bills, anti-trans bills. 4 of them are bathroom bans. One of them is bathroom ban in workplaces, and 3 of them are general trans bathroom bans. One of those will very likely pass, I think, through the Republican Congress because they suck and they like bad stuff. But we'll see what happens whenever that goes to the courts and see if it gets struck down. I think it'll get struck down because it's pretty blatantly illegal and violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But who knows? And then there's another one. There's another bill legalizing discriminating against trans people in healthcare. There's another one, forced outing by schools, which means like if a teacher finds out you're trans, the teacher has to like tell your parents and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty nuts. I don't think teachers get paid enough to handle stuff like that. And then one of them wants to remove access to healthcare for trans people who already have it, which is removing the grandfather clause. Like, they previously passed a healthcare ban on trans people, and they said, like, if you're currently receiving hormones or whatever, you can keep doing it, right, if you're an adult. But they're gonna try to remove that. So that's all happening Wednesday, January 17th. And I can't go to it because my job is making me do stuff, so I can't be there this year, but pay attention, see it. If you're wondering why people are leaving Missouri, there you go. They're really coming after us the last few years, and it's looking like it's going to be worse. So that's some depressing news for trans people who live around Missouri. Hey, also on Wednesday. All right, so I've been watching this show, Fargo. Okay. You may have heard of the movie or previous seasons of the show. Every season is its own little story that's completely separate from the rest of the show. Season 5 happens in 2019 in like North Dakota, Minnesota area, and it covers. I'm just gonna where the last episode that came out was the second to last episode for the final season. For the 5th season. The series finale is going to come out this Wednesday. And dude, it's so good. It's so fucking good. It's the best series. It's the best like season of television I think I've ever seen. It's got John Hamm, Don Draper from Mad Men. He plays the main villain. He's a corrupt sheriff in North Dakota, I think it is, or South Dakota. I'm not sure. One of the stupid Dakotas, and he's like out in the rural things, and he is super corrupt. He's a fascist. He's a theocratic fascist, and he is funding a paramilitary militia out in the West that is supposed to be for freedom or whatever. Like it's a pretty direct comparison to like stuff that is happening recently. Like I know of sheriffs and stuff in these Western states that are refusing to comply with state laws and things like that. Like won't enforce state gun laws. And it's turning into conflicts between the local government, the local PD, versus the state PD versus federal enforcement. So like the FBI and things like that. And the show, I'm going to try to not spoil too much, but I'm going to spoil a little bit to talk about the show. One of my favorite characters in the show, who makes the show so much more interesting, is this dude named Munch. Okay, he starts out. He's a henchman sent to capture and bring back this girl, and you think he's just gonna be a guy that like dies in episode 1 or whatever, but it turns out he's like through the whole show. And to get into it, you learn more about him. He's a Welsh pagan dude who he talks really weird, and he's got a weird sense of justice, but it's like kind of cool or whatever. And every time he's on screen, I'm just like Munch, 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 Munch. He's a hitman he's really good at what he does, and like I said, he's got this sense of justice that you wouldn't expect out of a hitman typically. But this, and then you've got this conflict between like I said, the sheriff and the paramilitary group that he's been funding, and this billionaire lady who's like, she's she's a conservative, but she's like a rich conservative. It's different, and they're fighting over this girl, and that's the conflict of the show. And it's really interesting seeing how like they're kind of like ideologically aligned as far as political parties go, but they hate each other in real life. And it's conflicts that like I've seen in my real life, not like bloody conflicts, like whatever, but the Roy Tillman is the main character. He's the guy John Hamm plays, and he's got this idea about like the Bible and how it should um, determine law in and his whole ideology is exactly what kind of I grew up with. And I knew this guy. I knew guys like him growing up in Arkansas, and they weren't. I mean, I don't know if they've murdered anybody with a gun like John Hamm does, but they would. They totally would if like the circumstances were right, and they can justify it through the Bible. And I've heard them like jerk off about the idea of dying in a shootout with the feds. Like that's what they all want. And there's a scene in the last episode that I saw where so that the FBI, there's FBI guys there who are concerned about this dude not enforcing the gun laws, and they know he's been funding paramilitary Nazis. And so they're doing their thing, like inspecting, interviewing people, and they get to the second to last episode, and there's a whole FBI squadron there. Like, I'm not just talking like a few guys in suits. I mean like dudes in like full body armor, camo, heavy military vehicles, things like that. And they're standing outside the ranch, and they're asking the FBI people who had been investigating, like, is there any chance this guy can negotiate with us? And the girl is just like, no, not at all. These people fantasize about this, about dying. It's their wet dream, basically. And it's like 100% accurate. I've known these people, and that's why I'm so radicalized against these kind of conservatives, because I see them as a serious existential threat to everything that's possibly good about America. And I think that any of your revolutionary ideas, like from leftists or liberals or anybody, you have to come up with a plan for what to do about these people, about these Nazis in the rural states, because you can't just leave them alone. If you just leave them alone, the people under them are not really living in America. They're living in this little theocratic fascist area. You have to deal with these groups. And that's what the FBI is for. And the FBI has been used for wrong things a lot in the past, but it's also suppressed these people for a long time. And they had to do a lot of that after, like, you know, in the 1920s, the KKK was getting really big. And the FBI, you know, would infiltrate. It would get in actual shootouts. It would kill people. And there's been instances like look up Waco, Ruby Ridge. These were like homesteader people that were like these patriarchal Nazis who had their little places, and they said they didn't recognize federal law and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, like, the FBI just killed them. Like, they didn't kill everybody. They killed like the ringleaders, and some of them, they killed a lot of people. But that was seen as a, like, that radicalized some other Nazis. And I don't know if you know about the federal bombing in Oklahoma, the federal building bombing. I think that was in 95. Timothy McVeigh, right? He drove a truck full of fertilizer that he turned into a bomb. He parked it outside the federal building, and it blew up the federal building and a daycare. There was like 20-something kids killed from the explosion, and like I think it was like 100 people 100 adults killed too. But he did it, and he cited explicitly like it was like neo-Nazi shit. It was in defense of Waco. He was angry at the federal government for killing his Nazi friends that he looked up to. And you see all of this stuff happening when you hear about Nazis. They're in America. They're mad about this stuff. They're mad about Waco. They're mad about Ruby Ridge, and they see the federal bombing and the federal building bombing as like a call to action. Anyways, this is all some very real stuff. I don't know if, I think it was 2014 when there was a standoff at a ranch, and I don't think anyone died. It wasn't much of a bloody thing. It should have been. I think the FBI should have been pulling the trigger more, but they they're very scared of doing that because like policies got implemented and stuff after Waco to protect these Nazi people because there's conservatives in our politicians who want to defend these guys. They low key are cheering for these homesteaders who defy federal governments. What was it? What was it called? Let me look it up real quick. Okay, it was called the Bundy Standoff, is what it was. It was in Nevada, and they were basically taking over federal land. Like, so the Bureau of Land Management is a government agency that controls federal land, and federal land is not allowed to be developed on by private citizens, all that kind of stuff. It's government land, and a lot of it is kind of unused, which there's a lot of it in Nevada, which Nevada is mostly desert. It's not really that great, which is why the government has it as federal land so much, because it's not super valuable. But there's still people there who want it, and they don't respect the federal government for having it, and they think that they should just be able to do whatever they want with it. And this was what was motivating the Bundys and the standoff, and they had like cattle like grazing on this stuff, which you're not supposed to do. And they were using a lot of like sovereign citizen rhetoric and like just straight up like Nazi shit. And only one guy died in this confrontation with the federal government, and I think that was extremely merciful. You can't deal with these people. You cannot let these people stand up to the government. That happened in 2014, and you gotta say Nazis only got worse since then. And it's going to be a bigger problem in the rest of the country as the country gets more divided. The nationalists get more energized, and you saw it in January 6th, right? They went and tried to take the Capitol, and really getting scary rhetoric going up in here, and I'm sure in 2024 it's gonna get worse. Anyways, back to Fargo. This show is basically covering what was similar to the Bundy standoff, and God, it's so fucking good. And the main character is the girl who was his ex-wife, and she went off somewhere, changed her name, started a new life, and then he found her again, and that's how the whole show starts up. And she was seriously abused by this dude, like physically abused, every kind of abuse against her. And every episode ends with a domestic abuse hotline number to call. It's pretty cool. And the girl in this, she's nuts. Like she is hardcore, and she's like female MacGyver. Like always figures out how to get out of whatever jam she's in, and she's brutal. Like she will kill people like in brutal ways if she needs to. And there's a scene at the end of the last episode where the Welsh dude, he gets her out of a jam, which he had been hunting her earlier in the show. So she was like, thought he was gonna try to kill her, and he says, the tiger in a trap, it's not a fair fight. And then he lets her out, And then he hands her a gun and says, "Now the tiger is free." And the song starts playing, and he walks off into the smoke, and she's just there holding the gun. And I swear to God, that was like the coolest scene I've ever seen in anything. And I cannot wait for the last episode coming out on Wednesday. I need to see John Hamm killed. I want to see the FBI torch all these Nazis. I'm sure a lot of the FBI people are going to die too. But, that's what they're there for. That's their job. Anti-Nazi. You got to do it to them. I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 lately. I know I'm super late to this. I'm a patient gamer. I wait for games to go down in price or for everyone to be done talking about them before I actually take it and start doing stuff. But Baldur's Gate is pretty fun. It's pretty freeform in what you can do. It's like a classical RPG where you can take a lot of different routes on how you do stuff. You can be evil, you can be sneaky, you can be dumb, you can all that kind of stuff. I think it's a pretty fun storytelling game. I've been banging this one chick. She's a Githyanki. She's like a alien, like a space alien, basically, on Earth, who her one goal is to conquer Earth, right? But we're on the same team because we both have a tadpole in our brains that we need to get out from the mind flayers, as I'm sure you would know if you played Baldur's Gate 3. But yeah, Githyanki ass is pretty hot, kind of scary, but I'm into it. The game is a lot of times I'll do things that I don't really understand the consequences of. Like I got this scroll of speaking to animals to where I could just talk to any animal. And I came across this dog and a dead guy on the road. And the guy is very obviously dead. His blood is all over the ground. Body's cold. And the dog is sitting there barking at me. He's defending his friend. And I talk to the dog and I tell him, hey, the dog tells me that his friend needs to sleep. His friend needs to rest. And I'm like, oh, dog. So I tell him, hey, your friend's dead. I don't think you need to guard him anymore. And the dog gets mad at me. And he's like, no, he's not. Nuh-uh. So then I choose the option to yell at the dead body to prove that the guy's dead and that and then the dog takes that as aggression towards him and then attacks me. And then I knocked the dog out and it pissed everybody off in my party. And then I just had to restart and go back and play the last hour because I couldn't handle the consequences of knocking the dog out. So yeah, there's a lot of ways you can be evil in this game, and I can't do it. I just can't be a bad guy. It's really difficult for me. There's this one girl, so I'm a drow. I play a drow, which is like a dark elf. We live underground. We're apparently evil. Everybody hates us, but I can't lean into the evilness. I find this other drow girl who is really hot, all right, and I want to smash. And she will join my party, but I have to genocide a group of tieflings, which are like demon people. They're not like real. They're like red people, okay? And I don't want to genocide the people, so there's no way I can get her on my team. So instead, I just knock her out and take all of her stuff. And apparently, I'll see her later in the game, and she'll be wearing whatever it is that she was wearing when I knocked her out, which is nothing because I've taken all of her stuff. So at least I'll get to see her naked. But she'll never join my party because I refused to genocide these people. So yeah, like I said, I'm such a good person. Okay, so that's it for the podcast this week. I hope you have a good week coming up, and thank you for listening, and I hope you tune in next week. Goodbye.